Jesus Christ. Jimmy, once you give me health insurance, workers' comp, and a fucking 401k, then you can tell me when I work and not work.
Well, none of that's gonna happen.
Tonight, we're starting our month of Oscar movies, on top of regular episodes where we look at some of the biggest movies at the 2025 Oscars. Anora, A Real Pain, Wicked, Conclave, and Sing Sing. We're going to have after parties where we have guests on to give their picks. We've already chosen ours in the first such after party, and we're going to talk about the other movies we aren't covering, so you should join the Patreon and the discussion, patreon.com/movie night extra. Tonight, for our first Oscars month episode, we're talking about Sean Baker's Anora, starring Mikey Madison as Anora, a Russian-speaking American dancer and sex worker, working at a strip club in Hell's Kitchen in Manhattan.
Who are you talking about, the DJ?
All right, seriously?
He's an asshole.
I shared my playlist with him, and he was very rude and dismissive.
You're killing me.
While living all the way in Brighton Beach near Coney Island in Brooklyn, where New York City's Russian community lives. Because she speaks some Russian, she's given a young Russian kid named Vanya as a client. After giving him a dance in the private room, she gives him her number to meet outside of the club. Turns out Vanya is the son of one of the most powerful and rich Russian oligarchs, who's in America to party and have a good time, before his parents force him to join the family business.
Wait, what's his name again?
Nikolai Zakhar. I can spell it for you. N-I-K-O-I.
I got it.
Yeah.
They start hanging out, with Vanya, played by Russian actor Mark Edelstein, giving Annie thousands of dollars to spend time with him and have sex. And in an impulsive move, they get married in Vegas so Vanya could stay in the United States. Things immediately go south when Vanya's parents find out that he's married an escort and send their Armenian fixer Toros, along with his cousin and a Russian named Igor, to grab Vanya and Anora and force them to annul the marriage. Vanya runs off without Anora, and she eventually relents and helps them find him.
I need to time
Calm down, listen. Ivan's father wants this marriage annulled. You staying here and getting this annulled. You heard my boss.
Fuck your boss!
Like almost all Sean Baker movies, Anora revolves around a subculture, in this case the Russian-American community of New York City, as well as Anora, who lives on the margins as a sex worker, but also legally as a stripper. Like all Sean Baker movies so far, it tackles class as a central framework. There's an incredibly stark difference between the tiny house Anora and her sister live in, and the endless international luxury that Vanya takes for granted. However, an interesting version of upward mobility, at least temporary upward mobility, happens with language. None of the friends we see around Vanya and his entourage are rich like he is. They work at a candy shop, another friend works in the kitchen, but they speak Russian, and that grants them access to Vanya's endless party. Along with Anora, the Armenians Toros and Garnik appear to be far outside the class strata occupied by Vanya's family, both resenting and hoping to please their employers, subject to a life of babysitting a stubborn Vanya. Along with the henchman named Igor, played by Yura Borisov, the man who seems from the outside like the scariest of these characters, is actually the most layered and nuanced outside of Anora. Ridiculed as a gopnik by Vanya, a slang term for a working-class hooligan from the Russian suburbs.
A fucking gopnik who can afford to live in Brightwater and doesn't deal drugs? Yeah, right.
It's my grandmother's apartment, and it's called drugs.
He shows extraordinary restraint, even as Anora mocks, bites, and kicks him when they first meet in Vanya's father's mansion. The movie is a constant reminder that for the super rich in a globalized world, Nationality and borders aren't really a thing. Anora is both comedy and tragedy, a reminder of how little the super rich care about or even think about the rest of us, but also a reminder of how little we as Americans think of the rest of the world. It feels like Sean Baker's most fleshed out project so far, less like the pseudo fly in the wall style that he shot even something like the Florida Project in, and much less fixated on a minimalist aesthetic. He allows Anora to experience luxury like she never experienced before, things like a 5-carat ring or a Russian sable scarf that Vanya's family doesn't even notice unless they want to be petty and snatch it away, are a huge deal to Anora, and for that matter, to us. Surrounded by luxury in an environment that's best described as a fairy tale, it becomes far more heartbreaking when you see Anora's new life and position as a paid wife slip away from her.
It's good that you're not part of this family.
Did I ask for your fucking opinion?
No.
No, exactly.
Before I introduce the panel, please like this video and subscribe to the Movie Night Extravaganza YouTube channel. Then hit that bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. Super chats are now open. If you have any pressing questions, send us a super chat, which helps me maintain the expenses for the show, in which I am obligated by the rules of the Geneva Convention to stop everything and ask the panel. Another way to help us out is to become a patron and give us money every month. In exchange, you get access to all of our after parties, bonus content, and we'll tell you even more movies we watched recently. Patreon.com/Movie Night Extra. We have a Movie Night Extravaganza Discord. There's an invite link in the episode description, and we have a Letterboxd HQ account. So those are 2 more places to follow along with us. Okay, let me introduce the illustrious panel. Conan Neutron is the host of Platonic Reversal, co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, and the frontman for the band Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends. You can check out his music and hopefully buy some at neutronfriends.bandcamp.com. Kristina Oakes is a co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza and a Twitch streamer. You can find her streaming at twitch.tv/cosmopolitics. All of her social media accounts are also at Cosmopolitics. She's on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, and even occasionally on Letterboxd. Katie Baldassaro is the co-host of Movie Night Extravaganza, a director, writer, and actress who wrote and co-directed Girl in the Basement, along with appearing in horror movies like The Purge Election Year and The Devil's Nightmare. You can catch her voice acting in the podcast series, The Starwell Foundation, and she is the host of What If I Don't Like It, and on TikTok at Movie Runtime. Eileen Jones is the host of the Film Suck podcast, the author of Film Suck USA, and a film critic at Jacobin, as well as a former UC Berkeley professor in the Department of Film and Media. I, of course, am your host who thinks you deserve health insurance and a 401k, Forrest Miller. I want this movie to win over Emilia Perez so badly. Congrats to Katie and Conan for becoming members of the Independent Film Critics of America.
I think we can all agree with that sentiment.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah.
Eileen, welcome back. It's so great to have you.
Thank you. It's thrilled to be here, especially to talk about Anora, which is probably my favorite film of the year. So.
Yeah, I was going to say it's one to take notice of anytime you are over the moon over a movie, which does happen. Haters. Note. And I agree with you, and that's and I think this is a real little treasure of a movie. So yeah, what you saw it relatively early-ish on. Right?
Yeah. I had to review it for Jacobin, and of course gave it a rave. Everyone was giving it raves. I mean, it's really highly rated. But I was just astonished because, and I'm ashamed to admit, I was really ignorant about. Of course, I knew of, but I hadn't been following Sean Baker. Like, what's wrong with me? And so I still need to catch up on a ton of Sean Baker. Man. Florida Project is really the only one I knew, which I love. But he's just so great.
Right. Yeah.
I cannot see enough. But,
I was shocked when I saw Red Rocket because I just didn't know that there had been another Sean Baker movie that came out. And I was like, oh, it's that Sean Baker guy. Oh, cool. Yeah. That's very different. And this, I mean, it's crazy to be like, oh, it's a 35 millimeter movie. That's like, that's somehow like crazy for him. But it is kind of crazy for him. It's interesting to see him work in that. More
he's got the opportunity. I mean, I write about that he obviously suddenly he's really broken through to a much more mainstream audience, and people are sort of wondering, are you going to do the often typical indie move to try to move mainstream and get some big picture deals and potentially flame out in Hollywood, which also happens all the time. And to have him saying, I hope we can trust him. No, the whole point is now I can go on doing what I'm doing and actually have money to live on.
I'm going to move you over here so you're not being blocked by our logo.
Yeah. So anyway, sounds like he's staying the course anyway.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't, as someone that's like, I only really got into his movies this year, but I've seen Tangerine, Florida Project, Red Rocket, and I feel like I saw another one of his movies, but I can't remember off the top of my head. But like, I don't see him going off of this course because it seems like he's found a thing. He's found like a bunch of different subcultures he's interested in exploring. I can't see that ever becoming. I mean, I can see it becoming this mainstream, which is awesome, but I can't see it like I can't see like the MCU.
You can't see him to call up to do a Star Wars or something. Yeah, that seems like unlikely.
Yeah, and
although I would watch
it. How the industry responds to him because it's a great counterpoint to The Brutalist, where we have Corbet or Corbett, however you want to say his name, he's changing it, says that his movie is a great example of how you can save money and not really have a high expense budget. His movie cost $10 million, it made $11 million. Okay. This cost $1 million, made $6.5 already. So Sean Baker has been very vocal about my film techniques are more minimal on the budgetary side, but not on the narrative and the acting side. I've been using iPhones. This is the first time he's using, I think it's 50 millimeter and maybe another millimeter. There's two different types of film on this one. So the question is, if you give Sean Baker enough money, will he tell you, stop, that's enough, or will he keep taking more?
Yeah, that's definitely interesting because the first movie I really ended up watching by him was Tangerine, and it was for our episode. And that is probably the most minimal movie that we've covered on the show because it literally is just shot with iPhones. It's shot with audio gear. I mean, he did it obviously because it was kind of like a challenge for him to be able to do that, but also because of the budgetary thing. And the sets are places that already exist. The people are people that he found that already exist in that mode. This movie feels a lot more fleshed out. I mean, it feels a lot more narratively like a movie. In like a lot of his other stuff almost feels documentarian in how he covers stuff. Which it makes a lot of sense if you're trying to go for a smaller budget, right? Like you can look back even at like that. A lot of it was silly, but like the mumblecore kind of stuff in like the early, 10s. It's
I think even
doing it that way, you don't end up spending as much money, but it's interesting that with $1 million, this is what he can do.
Well,
and a testament to how cheap the Tangerine was. They tried to put both of the iPhones that it was filmed on in the Smithsonian, and they could only do one. Because the other one was still Sean's iPhone. He's like, no,
it was still his phone. That's amazing. I love it.
I can't.
You guys know this is filmed on an iPhone?
So Criterion has a bunch of his older stuff that they put up too, including Takeout, which I had not seen, which is actually, it's like, it's that same sort of crossing the line of documentary and like John Cassavetes style cinema and whatnot. Super cool and interesting. And in 2004 even, I was pretty astute with like paying attention to this kind of thing. I'd missed me completely. Like I would say until, I mean, I heard rumbles with Florida Project, but it was Tangerine. It seems like was the big one that kind of brought him to whatever you would call the mainstream. But yeah, Red Rocket, it was like, oh no, this is a straight up narrative. But that was the first one that was like, oh, this is like not crossing that line. Like you would never mistake it. Be like, am I watching a documentary? Yeah, it's very much like just, oh no, this is a narrative about the worst dude ever, who also happens to be a sex worker.
Yeah,
like it's just like constantly on the grift and hilarious. By the way, I found it really funny.
I love Simon Rex.
Oh, he's great. No, he's. I mean that as a compliment. Yeah, it's hilarious. It's
yeah.
But you gotta give him credit too, though. He can really meld mainstream actors with, so-called unknowns, like in Florida Project, where Willem Dafoe just does aces work.
It's almost the opposite of when we were talking about the Spike Lee movie, Inside Man, right? We were talking about that movie, and they had Willem Dafoe just trying to play like the most normal guy ever, who was just like a cop at a computer, and it was like, dude, this is Willem Dafoe, but he was able to utilize.
It's a stretch for him. Yeah, exactly.
Being normal,
he was able to utilize him in a way where he kind of melded into the background because he was working at that seedy hotel that was kind of putting them up while
because he's still kind of extreme in his precision and wanting to fix everything, and he's so menschy that it's just heartbreaking. And using that skull-like face to play a menschy character is really a wonderful thing.
Kristina, when was your first experience with Anora?
I can't say. I don't want to offend KT.
So fell off the truck.
Pirate it?
Got it.
Oh, you stole it. Cool.
It wasn't playing anywhere near me, so
It
through HBO.
It did have a
You can
very
VOD it.
Wide
it
release.
did have a very very narrow release when it first came out. Like it is on VOD now, but like it wasn't until I think a few
I
weeks
rushed
ago.
out to see it because with the record that Milwaukee has for keeping like movies I want to see in theaters, it's like you better see it like the first showing or it's going to be
Oh,
gone.
same in Buffalo. I had to race out in case it was only there a week. Yeah. Constant problem. Yeah.
We got to make room for all this like mid dad fare instead.
Yeah.
They had they kind of made a big deal about having it at Upstate Films in Rhinebeck. So like that it was I didn't end up seeing it, but they had a whole rollout for it and stuff, which I thought was cool.
Well, and the reason why I asked is because this. Oh, I was just going to say that like it plays very well with an audience, very well, especially all the like.
God, it's such a fun film. I was like trying not to laugh in the Discord.
Yeah.
And I was going to say part of the reason why I am anti-piracy, especially for a movie of this caliber, is that when you don't put in the ticket numbers and don't show the like Hollywood how many people are actually watching this movie, how much ticket sales it's going to bring in, it can affect whether or not it moves the needle at all.
Yeah. And Katie, we were explaining that in the Discord after the after party. Like, if this would have had a solid, good streaming release closer around to the Oscar buzz would be more prominent. But we're stuck with Amelia Perez.
But I'm hoping the shine is really off. The latest scandal is a bad
It
one.
never ends. It never ends. It never ends, Eileen.
But
ironically, the statistically most likely based on release date is simply a complete unknown. Because it's a Christmas Day release. Those have the most likely to win Best Picture.
which would still be surprising for sure.
I mean, it's not Amelia Perez.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, what is it? I don't care who wins. I just want Amelia Perez to lose. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. But I think that it is notable too. Like seeing this in the theater was just like I was like, oh, this is a movie that in a slightly better world, it would have been a movie that people go out with their friends to go see.
Yeah.
And I think unfortunately, and once it won, was it Con that it won? Was it Grand Jury Prize, right? I think that once that happened, people maybe gave it more credence. But I think a lot of people expected like, oh yeah, I know what that is. I know what that guy's movies look like. I know what that is. I'm sure it's good. And like didn't even like check it out. And then it took basically winning the most prestigious prize at the most prestigious film festival for people like, oh, hey, maybe there's something worth checking out here. And that is the world that we live in, which is checked up.
Yeah.
Isn't Con in May? So it won Palme d'Or in May, and then it doesn't get a release until September. So it even wore off its buzz from that win before it made it to American audiences.
Yeah, because I do remember
early summer release if you think about it.
Yeah, I do because I remember everyone saying like I remember a whole bunch of people just being like, "Oh hell yeah!" Like I'm totally gonna check this out, and I'm sure a lot of them like by the time September rolled around probably forgot, but. It was a big deal when it won the Palme d'Or, and I remember they had Mikey Madison up there, and they had Sean Baker up there, and he gave a speech, and he said, he was like, "This goes out." He says something like, "This goes out to all the sex workers, past, present, and future."
Yeah.
Honestly, this movie made me wish I was like a stripper, but I'm too old. So.
Having actually been a stripper, it's not. This is a good representation, but do not. This is like watching Train Spotting and being like, oh, maybe I should have done a little bit of heroin.
Yeah, heroin looks great. That's like a good time.
Anora, and then like, I don't know, maybe I should be a stripper. Like,
growing up, because I'm a 30-60, a lot of people grew up like, man, you should be like in porn or doing stripping or some type of sex work. I'm like, thanks, guys.
Yeah, well, how do you respond to that? Anyway, Tom Drum, I'm responding this way. Palme d'Or is my Oscar anyway. There you go. Thank you.
But I was gonna say it's Kristina, it's your version of like Goodfellas, where you're like they do get a lot of free stuff by doing that. Like
all my life, I've always wanted to be a stripper.
All my life, I always wanted to
for as
be
long
in a
as I
strip
can
club.
remember.
Yeah, exactly.
I think though that
actually,
like
you know what?
Yeah.
I was going to say
go
they
ahead.
did a really good job on some of the realism, and you shared a wonderful article about this, and then Lauren commented on it as well. Schminard, the way that like when she walks up to the house the first time she's going to meet the kid, she has pole kisses on her inner thigh from having worked. So like they gave her bruises where she should have had bruises. They didn't like they didn't make a like Pretty Woman version of a like acceptable. It was very realistic the way her body would have looked.
And you can still see those same bruises when she kicks the guy in the face. That like every scene where he kicks that guy right through the table. She still has those bruises on her legs from from being on the pole. That article was really cool. And something else that I found out that goes along with it is that she had a screening of this movie before it came out. I think even before it came out at Con, that was just sex workers. So all of the sex workers.
Oh, that's awesome.
All the dancers. Cool. She did like a bunch of research. She had them all get together and she screened it for them, and they ended up clicking their like heels together the entire.
For applauding and stuff.
That was, like, she said that was the greatest. That was the greatest like praise she ever got. Was like,
that's so sweet.
That's awesome.
It is. That's very heartwarming.
It's ironic that Amelia Perez is so hated by Mexicans. The Brutalist is so hated by architecture people, and then there's this movie that's like, let it win. The people it's about. Actually,
we like it.
Yeah, the sex workers being represented. Love it. Yes.
That's right.
I want to address the Pretty Woman of it all, which seemed to be when this first came out, the only thing that people could say about it. And this movie is not like Pretty Woman at all, unless you leave in the first 15 minutes or something. I don't know like what the hell movie you saw.
Yeah, Conan.
And we mentioned it when Adam McKay was on, right? Because I said Nights of Cabiria, which blew my mind. He's like, I love Nights of Cabiria, and we're like, okay, now we're talking about Fellini with Adam McKay. Cool. Nice show. Right on.
You can say that it has elements of Pretty Woman minus the makeover, but it's more of like a fractured Cinderella story.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I totally and there's like the Coen brothers of it all too, like the running around trying to find him and
the funny stuff. Yeah.
The Lubitz kind of like Howard Hawks of it, you know.
Yeah. It's like because you think, oh, this this sex worker is gonna be the wife of rich oligarch, she's gonna be somebody or whatever, but it doesn't end up being like that. That's like everyone's, like a lot of working class people's dream is to marry someone rich and maybe be a part of something bigger, and then it isn't it's not what it seems to be.
The problem is, I think Cinderella story is like used for every Hallmark movie ever too. So it's like one of those things where like it doesn't even mean anything anymore really, but that is actually kind of what it is, but it's like a fractured modern take on it that
distorted,
is grounded in reality. Well, it's distorted because it's realistic. It's like this is like the outcome.
The Pretty Woman side of it, though. Nobody in this movie is ever trying to save her. In fact, quite the opposite, right? Like,
no,
watching
trying to ruin her.
Watching it the first time, I remember being like, "She can end up cut up in a suitcase." I've seen all the Tom Baker movies. I know that's not what he does, but that was my first thought, because there's so much inherent violence to the performances, even though the violence never actually happens, right? Like you can feel the menace is palpable, and some of that maybe is like American brain and the fact that they're like Armenians and Russians, and you're like, oh,
we're used to seeing that,
But
and nobody was.
No, go ahead, Kate.
No, go ahead. I was gonna say, you're so right. Nobody was trying to save her. It's so crutch. And she's not special. Cinderella is special. She didn't know that there was this special thing about her. All those stories where the character didn't know that she was secretly the princess of Moldavia. Like, Anora just happened to speak Russian. Anybody could have happened to be there at that time. And so there isn't a reason she needs to be saved. It's like not a hooker with a heart of gold. It's just another sex worker. That's why she represents everyone, and it hits so well with everybody.
Yeah.
And it's probably something where people that have only ever seen sex workers portrayed in film, that's like the one movie they've seen or that they're familiar with. It's probably as simple as that.
Well, and the thing is, like, she's not even particularly good at speaking Russian, which over and over, like, and for part of it, like, as someone that doesn't speak any Russian, I'm like, is she like, but he's like, he's kind of gassing her up, like, oh, your Russian's great, like, it's good, like, let's party or whatever. And you're like, there's no way that her Russian is that good, right? Like, you're gonna find out this is like pretty broken Russian.
Yeah.
So it's like,
your etchings are wonderful. Yeah. Okay, sure.
It's not even like she could have been, and like it's not. Well, it's that she could have been anyone, but it's not even like that. She's like, oh, she happens to be amazing at Russian for some reason that you never really find out, right? Like, it's like, no, her Russian is fractured. She's a mess. Like everybody around her is a mess. The rich people are really a fucking mess. So like, it's no judgment on the poorer characters that are also a mess. Like, there's a clear hierarchy that breaks down on several different occasions, but this hierarchy that she's coming to from the outside, is already a mess.
Yeah, but the way she's not a mess, which I found extraordinary, she hasn't absorbed the working class sense of course, this isn't for me. I'm not going to get it. It's already ruled out.
Yeah.
So that even if the miracle happened and she went maybe, it would have been followed by the slinking away, and that's of course the whole rest of the movie is. She refuses to slink away.
Yeah.
And that,
like
you've been working
down.
class yourself, is just like, this is fabulous. I can't even imagine, because I always thought blue collar, so I'm already out. So I'm always ready. Or I was always ready.
Everybody knows, everybody, everyone that is like, people that their attitude is bigger than they are, right? Like it's almost like the bark is bigger than the bite in some ways, because as workers, as people that don't have all of this power, like you can only punch either in your weight class or above your weight class. And I think everybody knows these women that have learned to stand up for themselves because nobody was standing up for them, and she has such a good reputation of that. It's like, you can tell that there's this vulnerability behind her. You can tell that even when she's panicked and scared, like her first instinct is still to bite the fucking scary Russian guy. She doesn't know what's going to happen after that. She doesn't know if that guy's going to turn around and
which has the great dialogue, "Watch out, she bites," which is hilarious.
She's so reminding everyone that her name is Annie and her other name is Anora. And I think that speaks to something that I see having been a stripper. There is your name, that's yours, and then there's your dancing name. And when you can put on this other persona who's stronger, who would, like, maybe I would slink away from this, but no, Annie deserves this. Annie wouldn't stop down from this fight.
Yeah.
And just to track back to, I speak Russian. Her Russian was as good as her Russian should have been. Her grandmother spoke Russian, so she understood pretty well everything that was being said. She also had the accent that I am afraid that I have if I'm not being careful. She has a very thick Queen's accent. So to speak Russian with that accent is literally something I have had to do. It's very hard to come off believable. So like, her Russian was as
very funny that Mikey No, I'm not saying her Russian. I'm just saying like they didn't cast someone who she couldn't speak Russian when
it's better that she learned
on the fly. Also doesn't have a Queen's accent. She's from
I know,
LA.
because you could see her in Scream 5 and she's not at all like that.
That was such a good convincing, like I was like, oh wow.
It's one of the many reasons why the performance is so good, because it's multiple layers of it, right? So and it works so well because you believe it, and you end up in these situations. And I want to kind of tag that point of it, like being like a very working class sensibility. Everyone is just trying to do their job. Now their job may be like being a goon or whatever, but they're just trying to do their job.
They try to appeal to her by saying, you're getting fucked, we're getting fucked. We're together on this.
Yeah, they're gonna ruin our lives more than yours. I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
what is she gonna do after all this? She can't go back to the club.
But like, just like I'm talking about, like the interaction in the living room and whatnot, where they're like, "Bro, settle down, bro. No, what do you like?" Just like. Yeah, and then when he falls and like and just totally wipes out on his back, and he's just like, oh, and it's like so deeply Coen Brothers, and in the way that that is deployed well in their films, but you just so rarely see it where there's humanity given to these like people that like in lesser hands would just be like a black hat villain. Right. He says a few cool lines.
And nobody in this movie besides the rich oligarchs, right? Nobody is devoid of sympathy. I mean, I guess her boss of the thing, you're like, that guy's a fucking scumbag. And then at the very top of the pyramid, the mom, right? Even kind of the dad, who is the oligarch, kind of he laughs at the thing, like he has some humanity. The only person that seems devoid of humanity is his mother, and it needs to be, because she's obviously such a towering figure. Like this kid is like a mama's boy. Like she says jump, he might buck the trend, but then he says how high. Like it's clear that dynamic is there.
Yeah. Speaking of that, can we talk about Vanya for a moment? Because when I saw this movie, I clocked him immediately for being like a lazy playboy, drug using alcohol drunk motherfucker. Like I was like, this is not gonna work out. Like I for the way he looks. I'm like, he's cute and all, but he's got that weird like vibe where it's like, oh, he's a fuck up. Like he's got a
Russian Timothy Chalamet. Like he's got the Timothy Chalamet like fuck boy vibe to him. That actor.
Yes. Yep. Yep. Exactly.
He definitely seems like a guy who would be very concerned about finishing his video game that he's playing poorly, rather than have sex with his. When
I saw it, like, I'm like, you're playing video games and not having sex with a beautiful woman? Like, what's wrong with you, dude? Can't get it up? Unless you're playing video games?
Oh, we do. Well, yeah.
No, I know Mikey Madison, who's so great, is, stole a lot of the reviews, but really the three leads are just all great. I think they're
Yeah.
all
Yeah.
fucking should be stars, American stars, every one of them.
Yeah.
And the
You know
guy who
what his last name? Borisov?
Borisov is a very
Yeah.
famous Russian actor of his
Yes,
own
he's
right.
famous.
He's only
And
32.
doing very little. All of his eyes. It was all just like
Yeah.
on the
Yeah.
room.
Yeah.
Sensational.
such
But
great eye work.
It's also kind of stereotypical to have like the two like goons, like the one that's like very like tries to be tough but he's very comedic, and then of course the one that's like quiet,
Mhm.
big
Yeah.
muscle. Like they represent like those type of stereotypes in movies like this.
You're
whereas,
right,
like,
and that would be like, oh, that's the psycho guy. Watch out, and it's like, oh
Yeah.
no, that guy's like the sweetest guy in the whole
Gentle
world.
Giant.
and you clearly can see, like, I feel like competence is a big thing in this, right? Like you can see from the beginning that Annie is like a very competent stripper. Like she's good at her
Yes.
job. You
Yeah.
see her
You can talk shit
going
to a
around.
diamond.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and in the same way, you can see quick flashes of the Igor character being a very scary, like when he takes the baseball bat and smashes like everything in the candy shop, right? Like if
Yeah.
that happens to you and that's in front of you, that's a terrifying moment. He clearly
Yeah.
is someone who's competent at being that kind of heavy, tough guy, which makes it
Right.
so much more interesting. And the silent, like the strong silent type or whatever, like
Yeah.
the Russian Gary Koopa. But like it's very like those layers, and the fact that he isn't like that, and the fact that he really can't be like that because he's too sympathetic with her and he's too vulnerable, and he really does have all of those he understands and he has like that solidarity with her. Like that is something that I don't think another director would have been able to pull off as well, and another actor, because it really is all in his eyes. There's so much pain in his eyes, and there's moments where his eyes light up, and his eyes are like when she refuses to get on the plane, he's like hell yeah, like you can see that in his eyes, and then she like crushes Annie for a second with I'm gonna destroy your whole life and take you to court, and you can see the light just leave his eyes, and it's like
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, a rewatch was like so cool just because I was able to like, okay, I'm gonna watch what that dude's up to like the whole time, and it is really there's so many just subtle micro expressions that he does. Like some of them I caught when she's like giving him the business like before going on the plane, you used to see him kind of smirking and like that's when you're like, oh, class solidarity, right on. That's awesome.
Well, I like that he can, even in the background of shots, he's also a great body actor. He could do just the slightest head tilt or hunch his shoulders a little, and you're like, damn, he's giving a great performance in the background. That's wonderful.
Well, and I've never been less surprised to find out that somebody that's brand new to me was a very distinguished actor from another country since Christoph Waltz, when I was like, oh yeah, of course that dude is like, super well known. He's a badass. Yeah, great. Only thing new about it is we know about it, but I'm glad we do. That's so wonderful.
Yeah. I just love this. Some people could say, oh my god, this like movie's really really long, and like the sequence of them trying to find Vanya goes on forever. But I'm like, I enjoyed it. It was entertaining from beginning, middle to end.
Yeah, it was
because of the line delivery and the comedic timing, and he's
Have you seen this guy?
Yeah,
I like the little things where what's his nuts is like trying to chat up the hostess to like at first to kind of distract, and you're like, are you trying to pick her up? Like, what are you doing right now? Like, I love those little moments.
He could be doing anything.
And then he throws up in the car, and it's like,
not legally capable.
Smell horrible.
And Tangerine is the whole movie we're looking for the guy, and we don't get him until like the last scene. So this is a Sean Baker special, like looking for a guy.
Right.
Yeah,
this is what he does.
Running around looking for a guy. Yeah.
In Tangerine,
you know what?
There's the
That'll
scene.
be his most known thing in films.
There's the scene in Tangerine where he has the same guy who's in all of his movies, right? The Armenian guy that played Forrest. I can't say his name, but they have the same scene where they're driving and that kid in the back throws up all over his tank. So like, maybe that's
the other thing, I guess.
Yeah.
So on Sean Baker's IMDb, it would be like trademark, directing trademark. Looking for a guy for like 30 minutes and then having someone throw up in the car.
Vomit in car. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is, and it's so, dude, that whole exchange is so great too. So first of all, he's all wound up. Oh, my wife has to use this car tomorrow. I'm sorry. Didn't you just rip the bumper off when the guy was trying to tow you? You don't think she's going to notice that? Like, that's not a thing. But it's hilarious.
I love that even that character though has humanity in that moment. The bumper gets ripped off because the car is going to tow him, and the guy's like, oh, I've only been on the job 2 weeks, and it's like,
I love
everybody's in this jacked up situation. Exactly. It's hilarious.
Yeah, my favorite moment also is when they find out he's at HQ and they're like, oh, I love that place. I was there.
the one
there.
Wait,
Yeah.
that was the guy that's fucked up, right? That's the Garnet guy.
Yeah.
He was
Yeah.
like, oh, I love that place. So I didn't know this. I was watching. They broke down a scene, and that guy, the other Armenian guy that gets kicked in the head. I guess when you see him in the New Year's scene when they're having the New Year's party, he is holding water and he can't pierce everyone because he's sober. He can't drink the water, and so I guess they had a whole story of his background where he was supposed to be sober, like he's a recovered alcoholic or drug user or whatever, and he relapses over the course of the movie. And so like when he hands him the pills, like, he's like a sober guy that's taking pills in the car, and then he's drunk on the plane, and it's like this guy's life gets destroyed over the course of that whole sequence.
Right.
Yes.
Well, but I'm glad it's not in the movie too, because then they'd have to have intermission like The Brutalist.
Yeah. But it's just like there's all these details that they were talking about even in that one scene. That like these subtle details in the background that like I would never have noticed. I mean, another one is that Vanya's ripping the lines and he's clearly hiding the coke that he's doing from the two guys. So like he's hidden back here, and they're like, yeah, we wanted to make sure that like the dynamic that was showing was that these are his fucking handlers, and he like that cues it up that that this kid is never going to actually like stay with her because like he can't even do coke in his own house, like openly like.
Right, but and that also goes back to like them being minders and babysitters more than anything else. Because when you first see them at the party, of course, we're naturally as film connoisseurs and film lovers, we're naturally they're going to be like violent thugs. This is going to be like someone's going to break something they're not supposed to, and then it's going to get really dark or whatever. And I like that none of that happens. Like it messes with your expectation. Well, why should they be like John Wick level heavies? Like no, they're just some dudes that are getting paid to watch a stupid spoiled punk brat.
Yeah,
and they don't really like their jobs, but that's what their job is. And God, it's such a small thing, and nobody does it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love that the gathering darkness is when is all surrounding Annie. Really, when that last sequence of foot looking for the guy, she's getting quieter and more still, and the whole way, and the lighting's getting darker, and it's such an extended sequence, and it works. It has such a cumulative power.
Yeah.
Which
it's like we're coming to like the reality of like, oh my God, this is like she doesn't want to admit she made like a mistake in marrying this dude, but like reality finally sets in like really on the plane, and even the mother's like, see, even she thinks you're pathetic.
Yeah. Like I don't know, like I feel like if you've like been around enough girls that kind of have that affectation where a lot of times like when they're getting into something they're like quite loud and then they suddenly go quiet, that like where you should really be scared shitless is when they go quiet. And like gathering darkness off really well. But like jumping back to the point about how these guys are like they kind of hate their jobs. I like that they're already bitching about the rich people. Like when the guy gets kicked in the face, he's like, "Oh, rich people don't have ice? What the fuck?" or something.
He was like raviolis or something, and
he's like a couple rungs down. Like this is somebody that's like probably related to Taurus that he's hiring out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there's the moment where he's drunk and he like. In the worst possible moment, he like goes up to the mother and he's like, "Oh, it's nice to finally meet you. I'm so happy." Like, so
and Taurus is like, "Read the room. No, get out of here."
It was not a good time.
You both resent, and then he comes back to her and he's like, "I understand. I forgive you." And it's like, because he got just with one look put in his place by by the family that he's working for. But there's like both that resentment and that desire to please that are happening at the same time. That like everybody knows when it comes to
where
like,
you really see the desire to please is with like the lawyer, that blonde, really face blonde lawyer, and everyone's just currying favor and like yes.
Of course, the dad laughing at everything. All the insults at each other.
It's also where the hierarchy completely falls apart when they enter the first courtroom, right? And then you realize like the law doesn't, the judge does not have any.
Yeah, New York Saul Goodman welcomes them in, and and then it's like, oh no, you're in this court now. Yeah,
and they're in front of the judge, and then the Armenian guy keeps going, she's not supposed to be talking, and the judge, dude, who the fuck are you? Like you need to be quiet.
Like, brown coat dude or whatever. Cat, like that was funny. He just kept calling him like by what he was wearing.
Brown coat guy. But but in that moment, right? Like you're like, oh, this hierarchy it was barely there to start with. Like let's be real. Like they're all kind of pathetically going around both. I mean, both Vanya because not allowed to touch him. and which is a very funny thing to be like, oh, listen, my henchman, you need to make sure my son doesn't get away, but you're not allowed to touch him.
You can't.
But like, yeah.
Which leads to those great exchanges, like the post-court exchange, where they go outside and like they got a ticket because Home Slice fell asleep at the wheel, and he's like, "You had one job," and like it's like, oh, he's angry at what happened in the court, so he's like unleashing on that poor bastard. Oh yeah, I would totally watch a spin-off with those guys.
Yeah,
and then it also holds true like with the private airport where he's talking about previous antics this dude's got up to.
Yeah,
like, his friends like filled the pool full of Kool-Aid. Like he's just he's just like relating these stories to like past time, all the times he had to deal with it.
He's like $800,000 worth of damage.
Yeah. Great.
Gosh,
I love it.
Yep. I was like,
yeah. I feel like my reading of it is like Toros handles all of their affairs in America, right? Like he's probably like the bookkeeper kind of guy. Like he handles all the properties and all this stuff. And then the other guys are people he hires out when it comes to watching this kid, which like is a fun. It's almost like a Saul Goodman situation where he has like his guys that he calls in to do a job or whatever. So you're like, oh, this is my guys. So like when
that's very Fargo. Speaking of Coen Brothers, I'll vouch for him.
Like when he gets the call at the freaking the religious ceremony, like he's like taking the call while
over the baby.
I'm sorry, people didn't think this movie was funny. I was dying. Are you kidding me?
That's crazy.
I was listening to Mikey Madison talk about it, and this guy was like, yeah, the movie was very funny, and she's like, well, I played it serious, and like I get why it would be funny, but these are
that's one of the reasons why it's funny is because she is just deadly serious, and that's what you have to do. And that's what I think a lot of people I call it the Sharknado-ification of comedy, which people need to be like, check it out, look at what we're doing, we're doing the thing, and it's like kryptonite to me, but I mean, it looks good on you. But anyway, I think that it's absolutely notable because I think it does a fantastic job with this, and it's something where. I mean, Eileen, didn't you like pull a quote in your Jackman article about saying like until recently, like Sean Baker was like struggling to pay rent even?
Yeah, that's what he was saying. And he's 53. He's like, yeah, until recently. It was
relatable.
Awesome. Yeah.
By the way, join the Patreon.
I mean, listen, we have a lot planned for this month. Patreon.com/movie night.
We do.
But I mean, that is the world of independent filmmaking. It's shocking in his case because he's had so much success comparing to most people. I mean, I did independent filmmaking for a few years, and I literally had to get out while all my friends who were rich could stay in. Because it's almost impossible to make profits. You spend so much time raising money. It's an impossible business unless you're really hitting it over and over, which you would say Sean Baker is, if anybody is. So that really shows you how brutal that world is. God.
Yeah, he said he's been doing it for 30 years and he's still struggling to pay rent until recently. Yeah. That's crazy. I mean, but he's
Mike
like
Lee's in the same boat. He can barely get distribution in the UK. It's like the same. It's like these. What are we doing here?
Yeah,
it's
definitely hard, especially if you're like unwilling to give up your artistic integrity, which I think
that's the whole thing.
A great example of someone who's been unwilling to give up any artistic integrity because all of the movies. I mean, whatever criticism people have had of past movies and the way that he's treated like communities that he's not a part of, I think this is his best treatment of like a without even giving it like kind of an underclass feeling, which I feel like in America you kind of have to a lot of times to like make audiences pay attention and care. But like I think that this movie is his most kind of remarkable version of what he does best. But it's like he hasn't given up any artistic integrity of any of these movies, right? Like he just finds people and creates, and it's like it's so different than someone that's kind of coming up with all this stuff in their head. It's like a far more collaborative process. Every movie, I think, pretty much
just like Mike Lee. Just gonna point that out, but
every single movie that he's done, I think he finds the actor first and then writes a movie for them.
Yeah, I knew there's a TikToker who's actually a stripper. She's she's pretty popular on TikTok, and she always does like get ready with me's, and then she like talks about like their experience as a stripper and like certain things like tips for girls who like want to get into it and stuff like that. because she's like, it's not as glamorous as you think it is, as KT pointed out. And she really enjoyed Anora. She was like, that is probably like the most accurate take I've ever seen in my life when it comes to strippers or someone who's sex workers, escorts, whatever. Like, she's like, that was probably the most positive portrayal we've actually seen ever.
Which is interesting.
In mainstream.
And I like how they didn't try to gloss over, you know, the way Annie has absorbed this whole way of dealing with the world, which is super transactional and hardcore. But you're like, but of course it is. I mean, that would be naturally how it is. But it's just
the job is microtransactional. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is literally the job. Yeah.
But,
gotta be the best girl.
It's transactional. It's transactional, but she still gets that line out. There's like, until you give me health care and a 401k and you know, workers comp, like it still has that moment where it's like, oh, she's aware that there could be something better than this transactionality. But like,
and she's most uncomfortable in those interludes when it seems to be slipping out of transactional mode, which is the ending.
Yeah.
But it's also when he proposes in a way too light and casual way.
Yeah,
and
he's like, I need green card.
She's got actually the dream of the marriage, and then going to Disney World for her honeymoon thing.
Yeah.
And so you can just see her going, don't play. And then of course the ending is, let's put this back on a transactional basis, in which you can't do it. That's the most devastating.
It's
so that also seemed very honest. Like, how do you do America as a human being? It's
it's gonna do you.
I mean, I think he did a good job of doing America in the rich sense. Like he managed to go around. He fucking went to the casinos in Las Vegas. He I don't know. He blew his stack, and then he's going home to like have fun. I feel like at some point America has been so overly commodified and so overly designed as like almost like a tourist destination, largely for Americans. That it's like, how do you do America? Like maybe it's just that. Maybe it's like, I gorge myself.
Which is so on that, and I actually was going to bring something else up, but I think that's a good point. That I think those sort of elegiac scenes, like the up to the wedding and after and whatnot, and set to the music, they feel very like Disney. It's like Disney romance like style, right?
Disney
Purposefully.
adults.
It's like please I'm starting to speak here. No, but I love that. I assume that was intentional because again, like like you said, it was like no, it's meant to be fairy tale. Like, so people that have like a very surface reading of it are like, oh, this is just like it's doing the pretty woman thing, and I guess they leave the theater and they don't see the rest of the movie. I don't understand how you come away with that as your
never got a
takeaway.
makeover. What are they talking about?
But I think that we don't get, because even though there's you can logically know something and emotionally know something, right? You can emotionally know that like, okay, they're having a great time now, and logically know like, I don't know, this is gonna play out.
Wow.
This might not play out the way we want it to, and so of course we know that, but you get so wrapped up in it and it works on your emotions so effectively because you have such like realistic, grounded performances that like when it does happen, and when he not only doesn't stand up for her, but just immediately like falls in line, you're just like, like it feels like a gut punch, even though you knew it was coming. You knew it was coming, right? The whole time. And then when it happens, and you're still like,
fuck this guy.
Yeah, exactly. How can you not feel that way?
Which I want to point out that both like Florida Project also uses Disney World as a signifier.
Actual Disney World, you're right.
Yeah, and well, because she says Disney World, and then she says, I want to have my honeymoon at Disney World, and Florida Project uses it as this like giant shadow in which all these people who are struggling to survive are living in the shadow of this giant like contraption kind of, and like their dreams are within it and everything. And
don't they literally live in a shabby housing project that's called the Magic Kingdom? It's so awful.
Well, and that's a very so that's the difference between somebody coming from the working class versus attempting to address the needs of the working class and not coming from it. Is that like that is a very grounded, someday I'm going to go to Disneyland or Disney World or whatever. That is the thing I will do, or my kids, I will take my kids or whatever. That's a place that you go to where you can leave behind the things, whatever. And then, cue the rant by somebody. Oh, well, actually, I don't like Disney and this and that. Cool. It's not about you though.
Exactly.
This is the American dream. And that's the point. And the point is that it hits like that. And the point is that it's seen as this somewhat achievable but kind of slightly unattainable goal, and all of it just works so deftly and effectively within the context of this narrative. If you stop and think of the story beats, look, I think it's a very real possibility the only Oscar it's going to win is a original screenplay, and I like the screenplay, but it's maybe the thing I like the least out of the entire movie. And the reason why is it's not just there in the screenplay; it's in the nuance between everything and how all the parts fit together, and but it's just what it is when the Academy is like, oh, well, we want to reward it, but we don't want to give it the big thing. Let's give it screenplay, right?
Yeah.
That's just like that move.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's a bad screenplay. I think it's a fantastic screenplay, but it's a team working together to make something much greater than the whole of the parts, and it's glorious to see because it isn't like. Katie, I think you said like the brutalist guy parading around, which I like that. I like that terminology, like talking about like his take on this type of movie and that type of movie. It's like, God, you insufferable prig! Like, just shut up.
Yeah.
Like, you were the only one making this movie? Like, there was no one else? No, just you? Okay.
Or it's like the director of Amelia Perez, talking, shit about like all the other like nominees and stuff like that. And
he's a French insufferable pig, which is far worse. But yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to welcome our French listeners.
It's also funny because it's like, wow, so many problematic directors, saying stuff right now.
But do you guys see what I'm saying? Where it's like I feel like as good as the screenplay is, like it isn't just like what's on the paper at all. It's what is how it all like fits together with these incredible performances. I mean, Eileen, you made a great point in that Jackman article about saying how John Krasinski was on the Sexiest Man Alive People cover.
God, that was ghastly.
Yeah, I believe you called him a bland dullard, which I appreciated.
It's like the more famous and successful he gets, the more talk about unbearable, unbearably conservative white guy. He's just ghastly, and there is stupid muggies on the magazine cover. You're like, really?
I'm ready for a real socialist like Dan Stevens on the cover.
John Krasinski gives a lot of money to my local town, New Paltz. So, buddy, I don't.
That's
you
right.
You can bring your CIA blood money here. I don't care.
Oh, I know.
Coming up next week, John Krasinski. Yeah. No, but like put that against Yuri Borisov. That's how you say his last name, right?
Yeah.
Like put against that dude, where it's just like, wow.
Oh, he's so electrifying.
He's so cool. It's like he just looks cool. He's got that like almost. That just like that guy, like there's something awesome with that guy. You don't even know like what it is.
Movie where he's the villain and he's fighting John Krasinski.
Oh, they probably will. That'd be exactly the kind of part to get.
Well, I mean, even like the
screener for that one.
The exchange at the end, like after like all like the proverbial glass is broken, but not much earlier where the actual glass is broken, and they're just like talking and like watching TV. Right.
Yeah.
And he's like not getting the nuances of like the slang and the language. She's busting his balls and this and that back and forth. It's like that's so much better than anything, almost anything coming out now. And it's so much more grounded.
He does the now Voyager lighting of 2 cigarettes and passing one over. He, the famous love. I was like, he pulled that off. He fucking underplayed it enough to make you believe he would do that. It was beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
There's such an uncomfortable exchange too, where at the end of the movie where she's like, you would have raped me if you had the chance, and he's like, why? He's like, I would not. He's like,
I would not rape you.
Like, oh, why not? Why wouldn't you have raped me? And then
it's like there's
a rapist.
There's no way to answer this question. This is like you like jump out the window, dude. There's no. You're not gonna win.
It's like trying to say you're racist. I'm not the racist.
I feel like if it wasn't a character like him, right? Like if it wasn't an actor like him that pulled it up, like that scene would have been far more uncomfortable and hard to watch. And you'd be like, after I've made it through this whole thing, but because it's the two of them, because they have this just deeply weird and like eccentric banter going on between them the entire movie, you're like
how was that charming? It's charming. How?
But even I said, I'm like, something's gonna happen between the two of them at the end. I know it because they keep doing like little subtle looks at each other, dialogue, and little hints about stuff. Like he understands what she's going through, and no one's on her side. So he's like, hey, can someone give her an apology? And they're like, no. And I'm like.
Yeah, and that's the first instance if you're not like basically studying micro expressions where it's like, oh. Interesting. And then there'd be like, oh no, don't worry about it. Don't listen to him. I barely know that guy, like
I want to hear what Katie had to say.
Get the broom, scoot him out the door. Yeah.
I was gonna say that, like, she says you have the eyes of a rapist, and we've spent the whole movie looking at only his eyes and only communicating through his eyes. So for her to say that is such a joke in our face as the audience member. Like, he really does not. We have fallen in love with him via his eyes, just like you. You weirdo.
And he has the line. He's like, "You have rape eyes." He's like, "I have rape eyes." Like,
I have rape eyes.
Amazing. And I feel like the sort of lost in translation aspects of like different languages can be like deployed so just ineptly so often, and the fact that all of us like, oh, that's great. This is all just like ace stuff. Like I'm here for all of it, you know. Great. And it works. And it even works after you've seen it and you know the story beats and you know where it goes, and it still takes you along for the ride.
Oh no,
deep humanity.
I was gonna skim through it and literally fast forward through parts. I just wanted to remind myself. I sat there and watched every damn second of that film. Right before we came on, I just like couldn't skim through anything. It was that good.
And all of it. It doesn't feel like, I mean, it's a long film, but it doesn't feel like it feels like it earns that length. Like
because those sequences might seem like you're entertained the entire time.
Yeah,
you know that like some of the long running gags or whatever, they don't seem like, oh my god, this is taking forever. No, it's you're entertained the entire time, and that's what I love about it. Again, I was like, I gotta not laugh and make sure my mic is on mute, like last night when we were watching it in Discord.
Everyone's like calling out saying they wanted to get a spin-off of just like, can we just get these guys what they're up to on a daily basis? You know, that's great. Workplace comedy, but they're thugs. Okay.
In the middle of that whole hectic like chasing scene too, they have that perfect diner scene where it's like everybody is pretty strung out at the diner at that point, and it's like so many times after like, you know, a night of like going out with friends and like partying, like you go to the diner and everyone's kind of just quiet, and like when they're not quiet, they have like, you know, these like bloodshot eyes,
eyes,
they're like eating food that they don't even want to be eating and just like talking shit back and forth, and it felt very like, even in that moment, it was like
relatable.
Yeah.
And it does feel like that scene in Tangerine when they get to the donut shop. Like there's always a kind of weird place that is open at a strange hour because that's where sex workers are gonna go, and it's interesting flavor to put in there of authenticity.
Yeah. And then Toros age shames those guys in the corner booth. That's a great exchange. That's hilarious.
No values, no work ethic. You don't respect your elders.
It's like a Sopranos moment, like when that kid in the restaurant refuses to take his hat off, and like there's that scene where Tony's like shaming him about like, you kids today have no respect, and it's like
no, it's exactly the same principle,
no respect
right?
at all.
Except for this guy has even less status than the Soprano character, so it's like even more like pathetic because it's like, oh, this is what you got. You're just gonna yell at these kids because they're not treating you like some important man, which you aren't, by the way. But I love that, and I love all those like that petty despotism, right? That idea that like he's the most important guy in the world in that world that he's in. That Forrest, you pointed out that like not so in the courthouse. Like, who's this guy with the jacket? Get him out of my courtroom. You know, like, but you end up in these small little diasporas, these small little groups for so long, and the power dynamic shifts so crazily. Like when the mom shows up, right? It's like, oh, this is now the pecking order has changed now, and this is. And if there's any like outright villain, it's like, okay, that character is outright villain. It's from our perspective because we've been sitting with the context of all of it and the heartbreak of all of it, and the fact that it's not just that like your kid is irresponsible. It's like, no, your kid is like piece of shit, man.
Yeah.
Again, Kristina clocked it, of course, but you know,
I mean, Torres is like, I left you alone for 2 weeks. Why would you do that, dude? Like you had one job.
100%.
One fucking job, and you let him just run amok in Brighton Beach.
Which is what he says to Home Slice at the car. You had one job. When it's like he gets the ticket, although he did fall asleep, so I get it.
Yeah.
But those 2 weeks also start at that bumping Halloween or bumping New Year's party that he has. Yeah, everyone's doing coke and stuff. It's like that's when you choose to leave him alone for 2 weeks. Like,
seems like this is well in hand. I'll see you later.
Like the Mac review, right? Like though the mom is like. Yeah. No, go ahead,
I
Kristina.
want to see like what his actual bed, because he was sleeping in his parents' room the time. And she's
Yeah.
like, there's ships and stuff. I'm like, I wanted to see what looked like probably like an early 2000s like bedroom for like little boys growing up.
Yeah, I
I-
like the
yeah.
design of that whole choosing that house. I thought was really interesting because you feel that how she's impressed, but when you're looking at it, there's just something off about that place as a luxurious place. There's too much glass and steel. Just somehow the lights.
He said
the
he said he
modern.
found it on Google Earth. Like he said he went on Google Earth and he went out and tried to find the biggest house that he possibly could in that area, like in the and so he said that's how he found that house.
It's very new money modernism
money.
is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I play The Sims 4 whenever I can, and I asked someone to build me a specific mansion for my Sims, and she did it perfectly. So I can't wait
There
to.
you go.
I mean, I was
Yeah,
like,
they
yes.
should have gotten her to build that house, you know?
I mean, literally. I mean, she's so good at building. It's like she makes all these mega mansions, and I'm like, damn, I wish I had that talent. I mean, people pay these people to make like video game stuff, so I'm like, oh, I should have learned how to do that stuff.
The Brutalist 2024.
All right. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, I think that there's this interplay between culture, linguistics, and money in this that I find deeply fascinating. And like, number one, like the fact that Vanya's whole entourage, it's not like Nepo baby oligarch children freaks, right? Like they're all either working at like a candy shop or as like a bus boy at a restaurant or like a kitchen person at a restaurant. Like they're all kind of poor. Their only access to somebody like Vanya, like temporary upward mobility, kind of like the temporary ability to party at like a Vegas hotel with this kid who's only here for a little bit. That's like, just a debaucherous scumbag, I guess. Like their only ticket in is the fact that they speak some Russian. And like they're brought along for that ride because of that. And, in the same way that Annie's only kind of key in is that she speaks some Russian. And it's like, they suddenly have this group, but like that wouldn't be the friendship group that he has in Russia, right? Like it's because he comes to America, but also the fact that nobody in America really gives a fuck who some Russian oligarch is. I mean, like I'm sure if you Google it, there's a picture of the dad with Putin or whatever, but like it's not like we don't know. So it's almost like a vulgar America centric kind of thing where it's like somebody.
But they're very protective of it, right? Like they are not going to share at all. Like, which is how you get to be an oligarch, I guess. But like that's like so clear immediately that any hope of there being any acceptance of Annie at all is like, oh no, they will never let that happen. That will never happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that Russian oligarchs are getting involved with trying to bet and make fencing events go in their favor because their children are being sent to America because it's easier to get on teams here that are varsity. And it's so... It's such an interesting way that you talk about it because I do speak Russian, but I'm not Russian. But I speak enough Russian to get to train with those coaches and those kids when I was younger. But there was a very distinct, like, you're not actually part of this group. Check yourself. And like the price, because everybody there is like rich as shit. And you're like the kid, they do need some extra people there. So yeah, it is almost a very Russian trait when they come here to be like, we'll move around and fuck around in America because that's like our play box.
Yeah, but in the same way, the way that they got oligarchs in the first place is that we fucked around and played around in Russia. The Soviet Union collapsed. Every American billionaire, every European billionaire went there and literally, pretty much forced them to privatize the Soviet infrastructure, privatize and sell everything off in like a huge sale. And that's how people got to the oligarchs. It was like the first people there to buy all the state infrastructure were the people that are still a lot of times oligarchs, unless you piss off the wrong person, I guess. But it's like, yeah, so it's like in that same way, like of course they're gonna come here after that. You're like, oh, we're just gonna fuck around in America, and like there's some escort, let's pick her up and say we're gonna marry her, and it's like it's almost like the oligarchs.
They're playthings.
It makes you think of Purge election year. I played a Russian murder tourist. The whole thing was like the most country to want to come to America during the Purge was Russians who wanted to have fun. Kill people. Ripped from the headlines.
But like when we talk about national security advisors talk about like the Ukrainian war, right? It's like how many Russians can we get killed? It's like there's that same thing going back and forth, and it's not the Vanyas of the world that are getting sent to Ukraine. It's the the Russian workers or the Russian, poorer people a lot of times that are getting sent to the front lines and put it to this meat grinder. And in the same way, like I think the super rich think about people like a meat grinder no matter where they go. Like they don't give a fuck if they ruin, Annie's life. Like who the fuck is she?
Yeah.
Well, look at how he behaves himself when he's like on the run, right? He like stiffs that one bar. Like when he's like, hey, who's gonna pay this bill? Like you gonna pay this? Like
$800 bill.
Yeah. and like that's so real because that's something that like rich people like. I don't care about that. It doesn't matter to me. None of that is real. I can do whatever I want. I can move around and okay, now I'm over here and I'm doing this now. And like there's no repercussions to it. You don't have to think out your actions ahead of time and plan it out with the money you have. You don't ever have to think about that.
Yeah.
So it's another example. Like the class distinctions on this just be absolutely on display.
It's just so funny that Vanya's like, yes, let's get married, and like not like think that his parents would disapprove of him being married to a. Yeah, he knew. Yeah, but I
think the thing is he's constantly trying to screw over his parents because he's a little rebellious fucking punk that wants his parents.
Not little.
Like I mean, you know what I mean. Like he's a rebellious little punk that wants his parents to pay attention to him and get upset and be upset. So he's marrying someone that he knows that they're going to disapprove of. The only person that he doesn't tell that to is Annie. Like, the heartbreaking part.
And she ends up getting, the worst of it in the end because he gets to go back to Russia and work under his father's business and be groomed as a new heir, whether he likes it or not. And she's like, where do I go from here? I'm not sure if I can go back to the club.
But he saves the ring for her, which I think is like such a cool.
That's kind of a Cinderella moment in a way.
Yeah,
like,
totally. That is absolutely a fairy tale.
Pawn that shit.
Exactly, but the reality is like she's gonna have to sell it, right?
Yeah, that thing's probably like worth $1 million plus. Just saying.
If anything, that's the only Pretty Woman moment where you have the one protagonist trying to hand jewelry to the female sex worker. That's it. That's all you get, guys.
And it's at the very end, and the context is completely different. But I mean, it's such a. And in a way that isn't Chekhov's ring. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they mention it, but it's like.
But it also is the nicely ironic. I assumed that they invoked Pretty Woman deliberately because it was so not Pretty Woman. And the same thing with the ring. The ring is now, in terms of meaning, utterly valueless. There's no romance left to the ring. There's other than it's Igor who's the one who did it. That's got it. But I mean as originally given, it has no value.
She picked it, right? Like she was the one that picked the ring in the end. Like that's
5 carat.
But she gets to hawk it. Yeah, you're right. That's what one hopes. She's going to immediately hawk it. Yeah.
I was like, it can't get any worse for her. And then Igor's like, and I'm like, oh, thank God.
Somebody did something.
Yep.
Yeah, because presumably she's not getting her job back after the Donnybrook she caused the last night.
Oh, that was so good. I was like, shit out.
But how great is it when she just punches Diamond? You're like, yes.
Fuck that.
go. Like, anybody deserves it. I'm not violence against women, but
yes. And the reason why Diamond is so jealous is because Annie's prettier. She carries herself when she has to. She's a great dancer and stripper, and probably makes some of the most money out of all the girls. And all the other girls, like her friend Lulu, very supportive of her.
Everybody has a person like that in like a job that they've had or like in school or whatever it is, right? Like everybody has that one person that like it might not even be with a full amount of like any kind of logic. Like they're just jealous and they don't recognize the fact and so they're constantly after you, and it's like that's definitely that person for her.
What the fuck did I ever do to you? Like
I do like I like when she kisses her. I like when she kisses her on the lips and then goes.
Yeah, that was good.
She's like, jealousy a disease, babe.
Yeah.
No, I like that the slap with the nails rakes her face, and she's like holding her, and she's
not so tough after all, huh?
So they really took seriously for once. Movies usually don't. Like there's usually no mark on anybody.
No repercussions. Everyone looks fine the next scene.
Totally.
Yeah.
I was listening to Mikey Madison talk about that scene, and I found. There's a clip that I can play, but it's she's talking about the stunt coordination part of it, and I guess I'll play it in a minute. But
she had a stunt coordinator, but not an intimacy coordinator.
Oh, so they had one person helping out with the stunt coordination stuff, and they I guess that scene got brutal enough that she broke her nail for real. and then scraped herself. Like, so they both had like cuts and bruises on them by the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's crazy. But again,
Well,
no industry coordinator.
That just goes to the grounding of it too, though,
Yeah.
right? Like that. This is the it feels real. It doesn't, and again, in a way that because he shot this on higher film grade and not so much of a documentary style, you are reminded that it is a narrative, but you're reminded of being a narrative in the way that's a fairy tale, and I think that that's very intentional, and I think that's incredibly deft of him to play against his own. What people's preconceived notions of what his filmmaking style is, and change it for this story specifically.
Mm-hmm. We should talk about the intimacy coordinator thing though, because that's interesting.
Yeah,
She turned it down because, and why? Did you hear about that? All the sexual acts were being demonstrated by Sean Baker and the producer. I'm forgetting her last name, Samantha something, that he's married to.
They're a couple, right?
They're a couple, and so that's pretty astonishing.
Yeah,
when you think of all those sex scenes.
Yeah, even Pamela Anderson, because they did the actors and actors, and Pamela Anderson's like, what?
Yeah, Brady Corbet could never. I don't know. Is that guy even married?
Oh yeah.
But tell me about some.
Lighting him up. Coming up next week, Brady Corbet.
Wait, so this is the clip where they're talking about the stunt coordinator stuff and the research he put into it.
Such great results, though. Boy,
she has a great voice for ASMR. I could listen to her like for hours.
And then she screams, and she's got like the craziest scream you've ever heard too. Like
yeah.
She does both.
Yeah.
Get you a girl with a
her. Well, her scream in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is like iconic. Like,
oh yeah,
when she gets.
I didn't know who she was at the time.
Susan Atkins. Yeah.
That I was like, what, Sadie? What? Like,
I've somehow been following her since the beginning, like since her first role, because I watched that Pamela Alden show, Better Things, and she She was like the spoiled kind of constantly flipping out daughter, and then the other two were like just various levels of weird. And she was like the more normal, but like the more emotionally unstable daughter in that show.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone predicted that she's going to have a big breakout star, rising star career. I hope that is true.
A lot of the Once Upon a Time actors are kind of having.
They're all doing really well. You're right.
Yeah. Margaret Qualley, Sydney Sweeney, Austin Butler, Mikey Madison. Like,
that's true.
I could go on.
Who would have known that Tarantino could pick like the next group of like
the new Hollywood stars? Yeah. That's crazy though.
Well,
Tarantino's kids or something.
I think there's a lot, but there's always a lot of like, oh, so and so is going to be a star, so and so is going to be a star, and it's like,
you're going to be a star, kid.
You're going to be a star.
Yeah, that's the kind of concern. Someone who's really great and charismatic like she is, you would really like to see.
Yeah, and in this case, it's like, no, yes, absolutely. It's a star. It is the phrase "a star-making turn" is overused, but this is absolutely a star-making turn because she gets to do so much, and I think there has been some complaints that there isn't as much interiority as some would have liked for Annie's character.
Good Lord. Really?
I'm like,
how much more interiority can you do? Oh,
yeah, do you want the Lynch De Laurentiis Dune style voiceover? Like, what are you looking for here? Like,
no,
I
want
to see it.
It's like 101 background childhood. What made her become a sex worker? It's got to be something dumb.
Yeah, that's me. You're probably wondering how I got here.
Yes.
Well, she does. I mean, her mom does live in Florida, and whenever the very few times they bring up her family, she kind of changes the subject or whatever. I noticed that too, and I'm like, oh.
Yeah. But I mean, but that's very real, right? Like, there's like a lot of people who have bad.
I do that too.
I do like my new theory that her mom is actually the girl from the Florida Project, and it's like she's all grown up.
Oh yeah, you can definitely make. I thought the same thing. You can totally
same universe.
Oh wow!
It's the Sean Baker expanded.
Sean
universe.
Baker cinematic universe.
There's my tinfoil hat when I need it.
SPCU. Great.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get it at all. But also, I think that we're used to seeing these types of stories play out in a certain way, and with a certain like almost like Psych 101 academic curiosity, and I'm so glad it's not any of those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what I hear when I hear that they want more interiority, I think what they want is they want permission to like feel like the character is pathetic, right? Like they want a backstory that's like, oh,
Right.
this person like feels sorry for them because they're a sex worker, rather than being thrown into the middle of a story where somebody just is a sex worker and everything that happens from there, right? Like they want like a moral to it rather than seeing like a story play out in front of them. So it's not
I want to see that she's damaged, and that we're going to increasingly go, oh, yeah, she's damaged.
And I'm only using that term because that's the term I've seen floated around.
Yeah.
But I think there are people that they are looking for moral tales. Where's Romer when you need him, right? But,
no, instead you got Igor standing there looking at her with more and more like first like intrigued, interested, and then just admiration and increasing adoration. That's your measure of who this
and they're
person
longing
is.
and they're kind of
with like 9 words being said between them over the course of like crazy. It works so well.
And 3 of them are the F slur. Like,
one of them with an L too.
Yeah. One of them with an L.
Fly.
Which, I mean, sanitizing language all you will. That's what it actually sounds like if you hang out with people like that. So it's like, okay, this is the realistic jargon.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I don't. I just think it's funny that like,
it's very
like
funny.
Out of all of their actual worded interactions, like more than one interaction are like F slur, and he's like. Oh, or call him a gopnik or whatever, like you fucking gopnik. I don't know. I think people want a moral to it, but I think a big part of Sean Baker's thing is that he's trying to destigmatize sex work, and I don't know if that.
I feel like his life's mission is what it seems like. I mean, didn't he dedicate when he got the Conan? The Palme d'Or, right?
All sex workers, past, present, and future. But like. All like a lot of his movies, and I think his movies have gotten a lot less moralistic. Like I think you can look at something like Florida Project, and I'm not saying that it's necessarily fully moralistic, but like her story is deeply tragic, and it has like that very underclass current to it that I think people criticized at the time, and this movie does not have that. This movie, in fact, you kind of leave with the feeling like she was kind of a badass, like for everything that happened to her, for what her position is in this world. Like she kind of kicked ass. She did better at fighting than the fucking guys did. Like,
Yep.
I think he's getting.
Throw this comment up. Law and Order SBCU. There you go. Sean Baker's Cinematic Universe. Law and Order crossover. The one that we want.
I think he's getting better at his portrayal of sex work as an occupation. I mean, who knows if a massive amount of an audience is ready for that. People seem pretty angry whenever they see like an OnlyFans girl, and then they're like.
Because generationally, all people know is Pretty Woman, right? Because most people that aren't Adam McKay and me apparently don't know Nights of Cabiria, and like, why would you? No one's remade it. It's an old movie. Like, how would you know that? Because you only see one type of depiction of that, and it follows a very clear, cliched story beat, and it's all honestly strangely like religious. In that way, where it's like there has to be like, oh, they have to die at the end. There has to be some punishment of some kind, yada yada, blah blah blah. Or is this the other way? It's like, oh no, it's a straight perversion. Okay, cool, have fun.
Yeah, I mean, for the longest
or it's a redemption tale that has to end, and she has to like Irma la Douce with Shirley MacLaine.
For the longest time, those are the only stories you were allowed. I mean, under the Hays Code, right? Like
exactly, you wouldn't get it made otherwise.
Yeah, so it's like of course it's like frowned upon even, but it's so funny. All the people who say they're against OnlyFans and sex workers, guess what they're doing? Subscribing to the OnlyFans, spending evenings and nights with women who are sex workers. It gets revealed every time.
The thing that's boosted, I think, OnlyFans girls and sex workers more than anything else on the internet lately is the rise of those podcasts where they bring on like 10 different sex workers and a guy who looks ugly as fuck.
Bully them. Yeah.
But it's like, that every person that's listening is like watching that podcast is like, oh yeah, I look down on them and then subscribing. Like,
yes. Yeah. And that's the thing that gets me every time when it comes to this specific occupation. It's like it's real. I hate when they say sex work is real work. Sex work is work. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
They should regulate it. Legalization. Even some sex workers are not keen on that because there could be certain things that might not, might get in the way or whatever. But they said it should be regulated, taxed, whatever, have safety precautions, and
Sure.
and all that. And it makes sense. It makes sense.
I remember earlier on, I dropped the point because we were talking about something else. I was going to bring up the Lusty Lady, which is everyone familiar with the Lusty Lady, the first,
Yeah.
the first peep show strip club, whatever you want to call it, that unionized, right? In the late 90s, and it became like a national story because again, it was something.
I do remember that. Yes.
Yeah, it became huge because it was the first thing of its kind, and so then now. There's everyone's supposed to see like think pieces, right? Because I think they just it was in Seattle and they just sold the building like last year or something along those lines. And so like of course there's a whole new crop of stories like, oh, it's funny because this establishment is notable for being the first unionized sex worker establishment, and that like where are we now culturally? And the answer is not that much further along than when they first did it, unfortunately. But it's I mean, we don't love telling stories about organized labor, unless it's in very specific, narrow constraints.
For sure.
So the fact that you have even like you can consider a throwaway line, but you can tell me what to do when you get a 401k retirement plan. Great, that's awesome because that's how you have to sneak it in is like a sort of like a ha. Well, that's funny, but also she's right.
Yeah,
kind of quip, but she's totally right.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to bring that up because there's rarely a time that's more relevant than right now.
Well, the quote, Bella Bax from Poor Things, when it comes to sex work, we are our own means of production.
Right. That's right.
Poor things.
Poor things.
That was so good.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, in summation, the Lusty Lady. Thank you. I mean, we're gonna get into with final thoughts and stuff too. I think this is like a little miracle of a movie. I mean, it's not little, and it shouldn't be a miracle, but I just am so flabbergasted by how much of it lands. I love it so much, and it's like the opposite of Shine Theory because so many things that are just pretending to be of great import just looks so fallow and gray in comparison to what this is doing. And it makes you feel even more ripped off as a cinema lover.
You despair of the things that are favored in this culture. Just like, really? How good do you have to be in America to get the full recognition? It's maddening. It's maddening to see what works for people. Well, masses of people, and certainly the industry. What gets amplified by the industry is always just maddening every year. Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty great. This is doing pretty well. As Oscar movies go, like now that
on the upswing now, finally, which is good.
Yay!
Now that Le Emilia Perez, it feels like it's
the vaginal pastilla. Yeah.
Well,
le penis or le vagina.
Okay.
And you know how much I love musicals, and it's impossible for me to find a musical I hate, but this one does it for me.
They've done it again. They've done it again.
Yep.
Listen, Letterboxd is a place where movie lovers talk into each other, congregate to share their opinions about the movies they love, maybe the movies they didn't love, maybe the movies that they exclusively focused on the fight choreography on. Who knows? A lot of those, weirdly. And all of this is a bottom-up democracy. Everyone gets to chime and opine about everything under the sun, not just Siskel's and Eberts of the world. Everybody gets to have their say. That is best expressed succinctly for the purposes of this bit, where weekly, the reviews are collected in this succinct format and put on screen for us to read to and react. These are Letterboxd one-liners for Anora. Let's go. Sean Baker does for sex workers what Martin Scorsese did for gangsters.
Yeah.
It's the Goodfellas. Well, I guess it's probably more like the mean streets for sex workers.
Yeah.
These Russian billionaires don't stand a chance against the mouth on Anora.
She has some mouth on her. Like,
ferocious.
Dictionary definition of a mouthy broad, and I mean that as a compliment.
oh, Nora, this mouthy broad. You wouldn't speak like that to an oligarch, would you?
Oh. Shout out to the old man who said to his wife, "I think that's a deeply sinful picture," as he was walking out during the credits.
Deeply sinful. Jesus.
Deeply sinful. Amazing.
That means he had a little Jesus experience while watching the scene where she's twerking, and he's like, "Oh,
there you go.
You should not be allowed to watch something like this. It's deeply sinful."
Little baby twerk.
Yeah, exactly. Bald men with sad eyes will always have a special place in my heart.
Yeah.
He brings like centuries of Russian sadness to his sad eyes.
It's weird. He actually kind of looks like my cool uncle. Bald with blue eyes, and he's a big guy too. So I'm like, huh.
There you go.
It's like, Kristina, I brought you a ring.
It was Igor's birthday?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Poor guy.
Right, I forgot that. That was great.
I love when she's like, well, happy fucking birthday, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, God, I love that scene so much. So good. Serving cunt in a way that makes you want to curl up into the fetal position and cry for hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If Mikey Madison doesn't win Best Actress, there will be hell to pay. I'm so serious.
Well, I mean, it's either her or Demi Moore now.
Oh, I know, Demi Moore. God, is that really going to happen?
I'm
yeah,
rooting for both of them.
I don't care. I just want Carla Sofia Gascon to lose.
I don't care who wins. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If Sean Baker ever made a pure screwball comedy, it would change the world.
Yes.
Hard agree.
Yeah.
Hard agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look at this broad. She's coming in here and she's like working all night.
It works so well. I mean, so many people can't do it, you know?
Yeah, it's a great for the time that it is a screwball comedy, this movie absolutely kills it.
Yeah.
And it's hard to laugh that much with like such a sense of dread, like the first time, right? Like not knowing what's gonna happen and being like there's so many stories about like women ending up in like suitcases because they tussled with like, you know, an oligarch's family, like stories like that. And you're like, I don't know if this is gonna go in this direction, but it's pretty funny now. I sure hope it fucking doesn't if I'm laughing.
Right.
Yeah.
You expect it, right? A terrifying tale of dating a mama's boy.
So true.
Yep. He's just trying to piss his mom off the whole time. And she's like, like my life is gonna be so different. And it's like, I don't know, you might want to meet the mom first.
Bouncing on it in a way that makes you cry at the end.
Oh God. I mean, yeah.
There you go. Those are the Letterboxd one-liners. That was the one to end on. Okay. But for Anora, please follow the show on our Letterboxd Movie Night Extra HQ account, where you can find all of the movies that we cover on here, as well as attendant material, short clips, links to all that stuff at Movie Night Extra on Letterboxd. Come be a Movie Night Extra on the Movie Night Extravaganza account. Not a Gopnik over there, over Eileen. Forrest Miller he's at Always Flacco. You can find him logging all the stuff from that we do on here and so much more, and he's doing all of it. So follow him if you want to see what this bald man with the sad eyes is up to. See what I did there? See what I did there? Yeah, right, yeah. That's right. Got your ass. Right. And Conan Neutron is me. Conan Neutron. Please stop screaming. One of my favorite quotes, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm doing the highbrow the mid.
Funnier against her rape. She's screaming rape, and he's like, "Please stop screaming."
Again, in lesser hands, it wouldn't work at all.
Kind of reminds me of a her screaming rape. Kind of reminded me of a scene from another movie that I remember.
At Conan Neutron, follow me for the highbrow, the midbrow, the populist fair, Criterion Challenge all day long, twice on Tuesdays. Not lately, though. But yeah, follow me along for all that. I am on there. Vanya the Terrible, Kristina down there. Kristina on Letterboxd, logging things here and there as she sees so fit. More and more so.
I logged quite a bit.
That's January. You've been Count Orlok's narration or not? Yes, you've been
logging things on Letterboxd.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait. We haven't seen Count Orlok yet. Can we do a little bit? Once I do my final thoughts.
He's interrupting the end of my bit. What do you want more? Oh, there you go. There you go.
Wait, where's Count Orlok on the?
He's not on the screen. He's
boom boom.
There he is.
Wow,
all right, Count Orlok. All right.
I'm logging things.
You didn't go for the nude rising from the coffin shot.
No.
Where's that standing?
That would get me off Twitch. I would be banned immediately.
You're breaking terms of service.
Katie Baldassaro down there at Movie Runtime on Letterboxd. She is logging all the stuff for her great show, What If I Don't Like It, as well as actual Movie Runtime and this show as well. Also doing the Criterion Challenge. Just knocked Sweet Smell of Success off, didn't she? Because we did that. I know you did because we did that last week. So there you go. Follow her along for all that as well as so much more on Letterboxd. Let's hit it with the plugs, please.
If you're watching us on YouTube, please like and subscribe. And then hit the bell to get notified whenever we're streaming. And we'd humbly request that you watch the video to the end because it helps us with the algorithm and helps more film fans to discover the show. We're also monetized. If you want to get your chat questions definitely read on stream, you can always send us a super chat, which will help us keep the show going. Every cent helps. If you're watching on Twitch, you can gift us a free sub on Amazon Prime with your Prime membership. But getting subs on Twitch is always appreciated, and it helps to follow us on there as well. We also have an audio feed, which is available wherever you download podcasts, if you prefer to listen to podcasts rather than watch the stream. That's updated usually the same day we stream, but watching on YouTube and Twitch is the best way to get the show first, live as it happens. If you want to support us with a monthly donation and get access to all of our after parties forever, which go patron only after we do them, you can become a patron at patreon.com/movie night extra. Link is in the description for that. It really helps us keep the show going since we do have some expenses to make this happen. We also have a Discord community. Link is in the description for that. We sometimes watch movies we cover on there. We get into conversations about everything from film to TV shows to related podcasts. We even have a Discord channel for memes. It's really fun on there. You can find us on all the social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, and Threads. You connect with us on all of those. Talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. Lastly, we recently made a TikTok at Movie Night Extra where we're putting up short form clips from the episodes. Okay, passing this to Conan so he can tell you about his music and this week's Protonic Reversal. Conan, who's on Protonic this week?
Yeah, that's right. So the Brian Case episode. Oh, let's try doing this. I always forget to do this. Let's try it. The Brian Case. Yeah, me. It's time for Conan. The Brian Case episode of Protonic Reversal is up in the general feeds for all to enjoy. And that just went up today because it's Monday. Thursday, I have My Card of the God Bullies returning. So that should be great. Haven't had them on since their great album As Above, So Below came out. Good stuff. Conan, Neutron, The Secret Friends. Big news coming up in 2 weeks. I've got a date, people. 2 weeks. New record and a couple tours coming up. So all that's happening there. Of course, Caterwaul, 4-Day Music Fest, Minneapolis, Minnesota. In May, caterwaul.org. Second wave of announcements happening starting Monday. And I was just on the Unkind Rewind podcast. They do it like KT used to do it, where it's like first part, second part. So the first part of that's done. I'm doing the second part of it tomorrow. So that's going to be coming out soon. Old Man Dugan is in our Discord and hangs out on the chat and all that. So he's shout out to him for having me on. Thank you for having me on. All right, Kristina, what do you got? Yeah, look at that.
Well,
Production.
everything is awful right now in this country, and it's sad that I have to cover it every single day. I have no idea the days are bleeding together because I just keep streaming. However, Shadow Saturday is starting to grow more and more and more. I'm attracting a lot of boomers who are like, "Hey, I remember watching this soap opera went out in the '70s," and I'm like, "Oh my god, what's happening here?" So yeah, with Dark Shadows, Barnabas.
They're trying to escape MSNBC, probably is what they're doing. But yeah,
I don't blame him. Barnabas is cured for now. Angelique's doing this weird dream curse thing where it's just the same thing, but everyone's opened up one more door, and I'm like, how many times do we have to go through this? But yeah, I've just been streaming, politicking, pop culturing, just trying to go over all the awful shit Trump and Elon are doing, and I'm trying to keep my sanity.
right, there you go.
It's tough
Full-time
these
job.
days.
KT, what do you got?
Oh, you muted.
I'm on mute, sorry. Not too much. We got our first ever mini episode up on YouTube. If you're following me on @Movie Runtime on YouTube, you're going to see that episode. It's about So I Married an Axe Murderer, and it's in the new reformat for the show, which will be prioritizing just a back end. We're going to have the letter hack coming on the 15th. He and I have already created our back and forth part 1 videos where I make a video hyping it up for him and he makes a video explaining why he hasn't seen it. And the hilarity is he didn't see it for the exact same reason I didn't see it originally. We had the same exact thought of prejudice.
Wow.
I'm so hyped. He's such a great guest to have, and he's just exciting. He gets hyped about everything as well. So it should be a lovely episode. It'll be out on the 15th. Again, if you're following me @Movie Runtime on YouTube, you're going to see a lot more content because I'm kind of shifting over there right now. So you'll see more shorts every day. Really, just please go follow me over there, and you're going to know everything that I would probably say right now because you'll just be updated with it. That's kind of it. Nice and quick and short here for you.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Eileen Jones. Our good friend Eileen Jones.
Let me think. What do I got? I've got a couple of reviews pieces for Jacobin coming up. One is, of course, what everyone's been writing about, the increasingly tarnished reputation of Emilia Perez. It can't be charted avidly enough, in my view. And I've got a belated and long-ass review of The Brutalist, trying to work out a long, elaborate argument about what I think it's about that justifies why it's a 2-hand job and 1 unexpected rape scene. We'll see how much of that makes it through editorial. I don't know yet, so we'll see. And with Filmsuck, I did a very special episode. It's an interview with writer and cinephile Alex Dealey. He wrote a great and insightful piece on David Lynch's films for Jacobin. So I'm interviewing him, and it was terrific because I had been, ever since the much lamented death of David Lynch on January 10th, I had just been really craving a very, very long and in-depth conversation with somebody who's also a devotee of David Lynch films, so we could just thresh through what is so compelling and powerful about David Lynch. And so I got to do that, and that's terrific. So that's going live tomorrow at 1:00 in the afternoon. So that was what a pleasure that was. That was fabulous.
I will be lining up if you line up for podcasts to listen to that, to read things. Yeah.
Eileen, let's hear some final thoughts about this. If there's anything
final thoughts. Anora is just the freshest thing that I had seen, and I don't even know when. And it was so exciting to be sitting in that theater, just going, "This all works." It's so at every point where you think you know where it's going, it keeps shifting its ground in this wonderful, wonderful way. That if you've seen as many films as I have, this has been decades of just macerating in film, that you don't get that thrill that often. And so just a sensational film that really needs to win Best Picture and isn't going to.
I wish it could. I wish it would.
Complete unknown.
Yeah.
Well, Emilia Perez. It's anyone but Emilia Perez at this point. So like,
well, exactly. But I'm still going to be a bit in despair because again, the lack of recognition is kind of shocking to me, or the quibbles about the film, or the resistance to the film, and it's one of the most irresistible films I've ever seen. I find it just shocking. But consistently, the films I'm preferring of the list of nominees for all sorts of categories, of course, is going the other direction. I thought A Real Pain was far better done. It's just so much not on a grandiose scale than Brutalist, which has gorgeous work being done. It's beautiful, VistaVision for God's sake, and all that, but it's cool. Just a mess. And in my view, and A Real Pain is tight and works, and for all of the modesty of its scale, has again that cumulative impact in the end that really catches you by surprise. So Anora and A Real Pain should be getting a lot more respect and attention. I mean, I guess we should be grateful, given how Hollywood operates, that they're in the running for anything at all. But I'm not all that grateful. So that's my opinion.
I think I'm gonna go see The Brutalist this week. It's like one of one of the ones I haven't seen yet.
Hopefully, it'll be done by the time we do our episode.
Yeah.
That's right. It's long. That's a joke.
Well, we only have to do 10 minutes on it anyway, so I'll be done
Right,
before that
exactly.
10 minutes, and then I'll be like, it was all right. I'm sure.
It was all right.
I don't know, but I feel like every time a movie is really polarizing, I'm like, it was okay. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like
I'm always the fence sitter of the of everybody.
The group.
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm almost never that one.
I was gonna say you're the opposite, whatever that is.
I'm shocked.
We are doing a real pain next week as well.
Oh, fabulous.
With
Wow,
Becky
good,
Rice.
good.
I'm excited.
Glad to hear
I'm
that.
excited to give that a little bit of coverage because I think it's
Maybe it'll help it get some more awards and other type of award, like other like you
They're
know,
like we
awards.
weren't going to give it any awards, but then Movie Night Extravaganza covered it.
Exactly.
That was the
So, 'cause
that was the
there's-
tipping point.
There's
right.
so many new awards that are coming that are being invented like in between now until the Oscars, and I'm like, hey,
Why not? Everyone else is doing it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
All right.
yeah,
we already
movie-
watched the damn movies.
The movie awards. We give awards to movie.
What the movie?
But Katie, let's hear those final thoughts.
I'm glad to hear you describe it as a breath of fresh air because the way I experienced it was so specific that I was afraid that it was simply a breath of fresh air because I had stunk the room up by watching The Brutalist and then Amelia Perez and then this movie. So by the time I made it to this movie, I didn't know if I liked movies anymore, or maybe this was a job for me. Like, because I did it Brutalist, which is like, you know, it took a swing. I hate it, but and then Amelia Perez, and I was like, I don't think I like music or acting or anything.
and musicals. I mean, you don't like them. But...
No, all the concept of music. Like I was like, I don't even know if I know what a flat note is anymore. Like I'm, and then I watched Anora, and it was so, and it's like 2 hours, and I was like, I don't know for 2 hours.
Yeah.
The thing about Sean Baker is he's not the kind of director I go towards and think like that story sounds great. And every single time I put one of his movies on, I'm mesmerized. And it feels like what Aaron Sorkin wishes he could do with natural dialogue. And it feels like a primer for if you wanted to be writing screenplays and you wanted to be doing narratives that were timely but realistic and building characters that felt like they existed without explanation, you should be looking at his work. And so I'm so glad that this is getting noticed. And I'm so glad that people can understand that a movie made on $1 million, which is like $1 million. Oh, that's so little, right? That's so little. Is getting recognition and is making 6 times as much as that, because that's what we should be looking at. We should be looking at ways to improve the story without just being like, well, let's use AI or let's get cheaper actors. Like,
Yeah.
And so I'm happy this is being noticed.
Yeah, for sure. Kristina, final thoughts.
Well, as someone who loves very certainly aesthetically pleasing movies, this actually was obviously how they filmed it, cinematography wise, was actually quite
Right?
phenomenal, which we didn't talk about.
We didn't at all.
Yeah.
We're talking about it now.
Yeah, and of course
Great.
the editing. I mean, this film again, as much as like a breath of fresh air, especially for portrayals of sex workers, and the first maybe one of the few mainstream films to kind of poke in through and change the narrative a little bit. And I think Mikey Madison, she's gonna be what? Obviously, she's gonna have a big year. She's probably one of the next best things in Hollywood. I also think the actor who plays Igor, even though he's nominated, I don't know if he will win, but maybe he'll become more, do more roles, for like American films, and I can see that in his future. Great timing, comedic timing. It's like a traumedy, is what I call it. a traumedy.
Instead of a dramedy, that's good. Yeah.
I feel like one of the hardest things to film, like one of the hardest locations to film and have it look good. Well, I guess 2 of them. One of them is obviously inside of a club where everyone's like, and you're like filming, and both in the strip club and in the nightclub, they do a really excellent job making you feel almost like you're there. Like it almost the filming inside of those places almost reminds me of something like, I mean, this is a way better movie, but like something like Spring Breakers, where you feel like you're actually inside of like whatever the place is. and also just filming inside of like a house party. Like it's really hard to film those shots, I feel like, and have it look realistic, and they did a great job doing.
Yeah, showing like the chaos in a way that it's not too much. But yeah, for those who haven't seen Anora, please do, because it's really good. Like I would like when I saw it the first time, I was like, whoa, okay, I can see why this is getting like some buzz. And of course, the can, the high, that's probably like, as someone pointed out, the highest award. Screw the Oscar,
Le Pomme d'Or.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. And also too, we need like a comedy about the goons so bad. Like if there's a sequel, we should have. It's what people like. What?
He was Armenian. He was Russian. What did they get up to? You'll have to find out.
It's a workplace comedy, but that's the workplace. I love it. I'm there. Take my money.
Yep.
I'm ready.
Ready, Conan?
Would you film it before Anora or after? Because it would be funny to have the one guy having relapse. You know what I mean? But it would also be funny to see him like trying to avoid all the drugs and alcohol and like the oligarch's house.
Be like that meme that like what was the meme where it's like looking at like the pills.
You do like the Better Call Saul thing and do both. Have one in black and white and one in color.
True. Before the Anora event.
Before the
Anora.
BAAA. Get it?
before he's had his life ruined by the cosmic force that came through and destroyed Armenia. Conan.
Final thought. Sure. Vibrantly chaotic and full of heart-rendingly wounded heart. It's so well rounded. All the characters are they're just trying to get through their day, and there's an element of humanism here that I just find so wanting in most modern filmmaking. It's just such a breath of fresh air. Star making turn is absolutely overused, but Mikey Madison she's stunning in this. It's the wildcat rowdiness, but the deep emotional center. It's one of my favorite performances of the year by far. Look, I'll go with I love anything that's going to evoke like the Coen brothers and like Lubitsch and Howard Hawks, all that stuff. I love all that kind of thing. But the thing is, it does all that and it presents it as like a working poor tragedy without being the least bit exploitative, but then also managed to pull out those incredible comic hooks, and that it makes it all the more poignant. And I do think it's an unorthodox fairy tale that's mostly marked by power dynamics, and I think it's done incredibly well. Nobody's coming to save you. There's no easy solutions. Almost everybody's lashing out due to sadness and disappointment of their own situation, real or imagined. It's a hell of a movie. It's one of my favorites of the year, and I'm so glad to be able to discuss it tonight.
Hell yeah. All right, so we should say next week we're doing A Real Pain. After that, I think we're doing Conclave, right?
I think it's Wicked, Conclave, Sing Sing is
okay.
KT Narc, we so pumped.
If only there was some way to know. If only there's some way to find this information before.
Yeah, I was saying I should have put on the schedule. But we're doing Oscar movies, and we're not going to be doing an after party tonight. But I think a lot of the other episodes we're going to be doing after parties, and we're going to also have one at the end of the month where we talk about whatever movies we didn't cover.
Speed rounding all the other ones, yeah.
Like Amelia
Perez. Yeah.
Speed rounding Amelia Perez. Doing a brief line of that Amelia Perez.
and Eileen will be voting in our Oscar will win, want to win, but she's casting a absentee vote. So
I will.
It will not be on air, but will be included.
Last year we started out with the holdovers, and we had Eileen on.
We did. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a good episode.
Love the holdovers.
Setting a trend. Yeah.
And I know I have to see Sing Sing. I'm so sorry, Conan. You told me how many times to see it. I still haven't seen it. I've been watching just so many movies. My head's exploding.
I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. It's not anything. It's not work. Like, it's something to treat yourself with. It'd be like, hey, I just saw, like KT's experience of like, I just saw Amelia Perez and I don't think I like movies anymore. And then like, okay, watch something amazing immediately afterwards. I would be flabbergasted if you did not enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I swear I am. Yeah, I'm gonna get it. I swear to God.
All right. Well, thanks, Eileen, for coming on. We will see you next week, next Tuesday. So we actually have an extra day in there, but yeah.